Okay, today is Erev Shabbos, Daled Tishrei. We'll do today Erev Shabbos as well as Shabbos, starting with Hayom Yom. Now,
You could read the Hayom Yom from Shabbos.
we'll do both because they're short, right? But let's get the principle of this Hayom Yom. Well, the principle of this Hayom Yom in the next few Yomim, I guess you say, was a mimer of the Maggid Mezrich, who said, in other words, to his Hasidim, he said that transcendent divinity beyond worlds becomes embodied. And this is the notion of Havaya Elokeinu. Right? We say many times, Havaya Elokeinu. Two names for God. What do we need two names for God for? One, Havaya, refers to what is written here in Hayom Yom in English, the transcendent level of God. And Elokeinu refers to the immanent level of God. And we're going to be discussing this at length, how it is that Hashem, who is not a physical goof, right? Le Damus, he doesn't, the Chachamim say about him, he doesn't have a body, he doesn't have an image of a body, and yet he is the creator of all body, all things. How does that work? That's going to be our subject for today's Tanya and Shabbos' Tanya. And that's the situation that the Maggid told the Hasidim, that the transcendent is in the immanent. The outer body becomes embodied. And he who is, by definition, not physical, is responsible for the creation of the physical. And and he said that to come to an awareness of this is the epitome, is the heart of Shuvah, to become aware of the embodiment that we exist in down here below is a manifestation of the highest levels, which are, why would they make them so high? Because they don't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that something which has no bodiness to it and no physicality to it should be the maker of bodiness and physicality. So Rav Zusha, he said, this is the nature of tshuva. The ideal of tshuva is to come to this comprehension, to come to this awareness. Rav Zusha said, this is too much for me. So he took the word tshuva, and he takes each letter, Tav, Shin, Vov, etc., Hey, Yud, Vav, Hey, and he has a little piece that he utilized in order to bring this closer to himself. And today, 4 and 5, we're going to start with this letter. First, the letter Tav, Teshuvah. So, Teshuvah, he says, Tamim. Teshuvah, Tashuv, Tamim. Tamim, what's Tamim? Like we have a yeshiva across the street. The yeshiva is Tamimim, refers to the Bachra, who are pure. And then we'll read inside, the 4 of Tishrei. Be pure, be sincere with God, your God. This represents the avodah of Shuvah that comes through sincerity. Sincerity means I'm not using my speculative, critical mind. I'm just giving myself over. It's like a child, a pure child, before intellect starts interfering with the natural state of consciousness. So this comes through sincerity or wholeness. It takes a number of forms and has many levels. In reference to Shuvah, the highest form is wholeness of heart, called Ernstkeit, earnestness, uncluttered by cerebral doubts, questions, even understandings, just being simply earnest in what you're doing. As Torah says of Abraham, you found his heart faithful before you. Nahamon, that's the word in Hebrew, nahamon. Just believing, just touching that level which is deeper than seichel, deeper than criticality, deeper than intellectuality. So he said that's the tough of tshuva. Tshuva means earnestness, right? Sincerity, tam, to be a tam. And that's today's Hayom Yom. And Shabbos, he takes, of course, the next letter, Teshuvah, to Shin. The Shin. The Shin is the first letter of a pasuk from David HaMelech. Shavisi Hashem nenegdi sami, that I set God, Shavisi, I've put God in front of me always. This is the name Havaya. I put Hashem in front of me. It's Shem Havaya. Havaya indicates the creation of the universe. Yud, Chochma, He, Bina, Vav, the six midos, and the latter He, Malchus. This is a process of Hashem coming down, so to speak, from his highness, which is Chochma, down to the level of Malchus. So this is the process of creation. And this represents the avoida of Shuva that comes through sincerity. Oh, excuse me, the wrong way. This is the creation of the universe and greatness and creativity and all the creatures. Bringing all of creation into being and sustaining it is accomplished by bridging an infinite gap. And that's what we're going to be discussing today in Shabbos' Tanya. Bridging an infinite gap. Infinite gap, here you can say, it's way big, right? But here really what it means is a gap that's incomprehensible. How can that which is ephemeral is not even a good word, which is nothing, right? Ein od milvado, there's nothing besides him, right? Bring about all this multiplicity. How does that come about? And the ultimate extent of the paradox is, if he is all godly and not substantial at all, meaning not made of anything physical, so where does physicality come from? So this is bridging an infinite gap, that's what he calls it, from ayin, the state of non-being, which is the state of God, if we could say such a thing, before the creation, ayin. We said the creation is a yesh, a something me'ayin. You've heard that expression, a yesh me'ayin. But think about that. How does something come from nothing? I mean, it doesn't make any sense unless you come to understand it, and hopefully we will a little bit more as we delve into today's and tomorrow's Tanya. So this is accomplished. This is the Shivisi. I set Havaya before me. I look at the Shem Havaya and the mystery of it, the paradox of it, that from nothing comes something. That becomes set in front of me. And this form of the avoda, service of Shuva, results from one's constant awareness of the way in which the universe and all that is in it is constantly brought into being from nothing to something. Okay, so those are the two first letters, Tashuv, Teshuva, Taf, Shin. Lessons in Tanya, our 2-day study here begins with the beginning of letter Kaf, the 20th epistle. There's a long introduction, and the actual epistle starts on, the words on page 357, Lessons in Tanya. Okay. And I will try to explain this as best I can. Okay, starts with a expression from the Zohar. This is on page Chof Tes in this edition, opposite page 256. Okay? This is an expression from the Zohar. Ihu v'chayehu chad. He and his life force are one. Ihu v'gamehi chad bohem. And he and his vessels, we call them the spheros, or the vessels, are one in them. So the spheros and the light and the vessels are a harmonious whole. They're one. Which means to say, and this is just where it gets started, we use the word vessels, but they're one. Vessels, the kalim, the things in which Hashem invests light, are also light, because there is nothing besides him. However, there is a change in quality of that light. And the light, instead of being ephemeral, begins to take on some kind of metzius, some kind of existence. So far you could say, for instance, that you have a straight beam of light, and we can, or even a radio frequency, a beam, and we can modulate it. Right? So that's a fair approximation. Hashem is one simple light, but at the same time, he has the ability to modulate it. Now, he's going to modulate it to such an extent that it's going to take on, is going to remove itself from the form of light and become something which we call a vessel. But the vessel itself, and really everything that exists, is just a form of light, a more refined form of light or a more gross or tangible form of light. And that's what the Zohar says, that he and his light, he and his vessels are one. Pirish, we have a little parenthesis here. The Eser Spheros of Atzilus, the 10 spheros of the world of Atzilus, every world is made with 10 spheros, from Chochmah to Malchus. Chiyuhi, the life force of that, Hein HaOres, the life force that empowers all worlds and gives shape to worlds. And I said, first we can shape the light, and eventually, however, the light becomes dense and dense and dense and becomes something tangible. But in the world of Atzilus, it's all very rarefied. And there in Atzilus, the 10 spheres of Atzilus, the life force, Hein HaOres, they are the light. They are the life force is the lights. V'garmehi Hein HaKelim. And this word that the Zohar uses for things that are caused are the vessels, lights and vessels. Shekulam Elokus. And all of them in Atzilus are godliness. In other words, there's no sense of anything separate from him. Now, even though, and here's where the paradox starts, there is a sense of something being emanated from an emanator, but emanation is the word. The reason I use the word emanation is because there's a very close connection. The emanated has a sense of the emanator, which is emanating it. So it's sort of just a different form of light. And that's what the Zohar says. In the Atzilus, he and his vessels are one, which is Masha'en Ken Bibiyah, which is not the same in the lower worlds, as we'll describe. The Sodom Lahavim, Hated. Okay, that's the intro, right? We have to understand well. How can the one which is infinite, basically, how can he become finite? How is the one which is unlimited able to become limited? Or the way it's on the page, how is the Ein Sof one with the things that he causes? Because once you cause things, there's a multiplicity. So how does this oneness and multiplicity, this is the classical paradox, right? From the simple point of view, that's a contradiction, that oneness should create multiplicity. Where does multiplicity come from if he's singular, all right? So this is the paradox of God, that he is Chad, that even though he is Ein Sof, he spawns, so to speak, this multiplicity, and he's one with them. And these things that I'm calling them, he's one with them, are called the Kelim, the vessels. Turn to page 258, top of the page. Okay, Kelim, Kelim by definition are limited. I mean, the word Kelim means vessel. Look at a vessel. Every vessel implies that there's a certain inside the vessel and outside the vessel. There's a certain size to the vessel. So by definition, vessel is limited, and back to the paradox, and he is essentially unlimited. He's Ein Sof. So another way of saying, how do you get limitedness from unlimited? So so the vessels are limited. They're in that category of limitation, but they have boundedness. Kamashikosev is written, Be'etz Chaim, near Rizal, writes about this. Amnam HaKavana, the intention here is, lamer, to say, Shehein Elokus, what does it mean they're bounded? It means they are a godly entity. They are a godly energy. These lights which are in vessels can create a compound which is godly, and that godliness has the power, livro yesh me'ayin, to create something from nothing, which is the extreme paradox. How do you get something from nothing? Right? If I had nothing, and I told you I had nothing, you'd say, oh, you don't have anything? Oh, no, I have something. Really? You have something? You just told me you had nothing. Oh, this nothing that I have is coming from something. Or there's something I have is coming from nothing. What? Okay, so this is the quality of the Ein Sof. I'll tell you one of the expressions that's used in Kabbalah and brought in Hasidus about God. He's called Seivel HaFochim. God is that which is able to carry opposites. He can be in a state. His essence is able to express itself in an ayin, which is ineffable, as well as a yesh, which is tangible. He is that which bears opposites or contains paradox without any contradiction. By the way, the introduction to this in Lessons in Tanya tells us that the reason that the Alter Rebbe includes this in the Geras HaKodesh, even though it's very abstract, is ultimately to teach us that the essence of God can be and is invested in the lowest, which is the physical. And that's also, he brings, and he'll mention it here in passing, Sefer Yetzirah, which says that the beginning is wedged in the end. The beginning is that place where there is no such thing as contradiction, because there's only one. But from that place where there's no contradiction, there can emerge something second that has a sense of otherness to it, but it doesn't contradict God's unity. And what is that most apparent contradictory is the physical. And in the physical are the mitzvahs. So, as Lessons in Tanya preface says, the intent of the Alter Rebbe in giving us this is to ultimately come away with appreciation of the essence of God being implanted specifically in physical mitzvahs, because that's where the contradiction is most deep, and that's where you will find elokus, godliness, in a state where the end is wedged in the beginning, where paradox is resolved. Okay, so there is this is an expression called to create something from nothing, which, as I said, at face value doesn't make any sense. It's either something or it's nothing. It creates something from nothing. Nothing, of course, being his essence which has no thingness, which I've mentioned, no thing, nothing you can say or touch or feel or see. That's his essence. And that essence is capable, therefore, of becoming anything, including the grossest physicality, which is the leather of my tefillin. And that's where you'll find the paradox embodied. Okay, so he creates yesh me'ayin. The creation is not just a precedent cause causing an effect, and that effect being a cause for another effect, which is called Seder Histalshalos. There is that model, right? These are called the 10 spheros. The externality of Chokhmah gives rise and infuses the sphere of Bina, etc., etc. It doesn't create it, but it injects itself and infuses into the sphere of Bina, etc. And Bina then touches Das, and that's like, cause and effect relationship. If I have a ball in my hand and there's a force in my hand, that force is a cause, and I throw it, that will make the ball fly. That's a cause and effect relationship. The ball, if it had consciousness, could look back and say, oh, I know why I'm flying, because the force of the hand threw me. So in other words, or you bump into somebody, right? And you can look over and say, oh, that the effect of me feeling like I'm falling because you bumped into me is because I can see that. That's a cause and effect relationship, where the effect has some understanding of, and the cause has a reality in relation to the effect. So these are the 10 sephiros, cause and effect. Okay, that's called Histalshalos Ilu V'Alu, the chain of descent from cause and effect. Mashikosav HaRamak, and that which the Ramak writes in this is Moshe Kudavera, in Histalshalos Ilu V'Alu, he talks about this cause and effect. The Chain Hu B'Zohar HaKodesh, and also in the Holy Zohar, in Parshat Bereshis, talking about this cause and effect. And he's speaking about the spheros as one sphere descends from another. The bechinas hakelim, and they become vessels. So the vessels, the ore, we'll take the sphere of Chokhmah, the light of Chokhmah, the ore of Chokhmah, becomes invested in a condensation of that light, which we call the vessel, and that creates the vessel, the sphera called Chokhmah. And that's that energy then, and each of the spheres are created in the same way, lights in vessels. And there's a order to them, and there's a Seder, the Seder HaHistalshalos. Shenikrois Blima. Now this is the Kalim, but the Kalim, as they are originally, are in a state of without any limitation. This is, as we said, in the world of Atzilus, uncontained godliness is experienced by the Netzolim, the emanated things in the world of Atzilus. And this is written about in Sefer Yetzirah, the book of Kabbalah that is attributed to Abraham. Because this yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, we haven't got anywhere near close to the creation of physicality at all. In fact, we're going to learn that physicality is not yesh me'ayin. In other words, you can't contract light. The more you contract light, you'll make it less dense, you'll make it smaller and smaller, but it won't transform into physicality. So see, physicality is the big miracle. Where does something tangible come from? You can really touch it, grab it, move it, come from something which is, by definition, totally intangible. That's a paradox, and that's the paradox of God. Now we're looking at the infinite one, which, as I said, because it's a paradox, no thought can grasp him at all. Because it is written, it's written like that, my face you will never see, meaning you will never really get me, because God is saying, because it's impossible. And we'll take a look at, Moshe got him, right, in a certain way, but we learned earlier that Moshe only got him to a certain level. And we learned in the Chumash Pasuk that God said, come close to me, and he hid him in a cleft in the rock. So he got him, but he himself didn't get all of them, because it's impossible to get all of them. To masig, by definition, our understanding is related to our cerebral capability. And our cerebral capability is an effect of something much deeper, which is totally beyond us. So even Moshe Rabbeinu, Olav Shalom, his understanding was in the first instantiation of the Midah of Netzach, right? Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and Netzach, 4 levels down. He could grasp something of that, as that is manifested in the Midos, which is called Zeir Anpin, the small faces, the Midos. And in the chain of descent of cause and effect, Humukov Maha'ila, the cause is encompassing the effect, and the cause becomes bottle to the effect. In other words, there's a cause, but the cause is not embodied in the effect. The effect now, in my mishal of the ball, the power of my hand is causing the ball to flow, but the ball is out there externally. It's not connected with me, although my power is in it. Kaziv Hashemesh B'Shemesh. Similarly, in this example we've had before in the first part of Tanya, like the ray of the sun from the sun. The sun is a ball of fire, but it emits rays of light. The rays of light are totally dependent on the fire, but the rays of light are not fire, but they're dependent on the fire. So similarly, the ball flying through the air, the power that is invested in it, but it's not the power, it's the effect of the power. Like the Ziv is an outcome from the sun. He's quoting Rav Moshe Cordovero again. Even if you're going to take this light and contract it and contract it and contract it, as I said earlier, you'll get a smaller beam of light, but you're not going to get something, light here being a metaphor for spiritual, let's say, or godly. You can contract godliness or spirituality, but no matter how much you contract it, it's never going to become physical. Physical is a total incomparability. It's just less light. So no matter how much you contract it, no matter how much you contract it, light, you're never going to get a block of something physical to offer, like dirt. From contracting spirituality, you will not get physicality. They're 2 different worlds. So you won't get, that Seder of Histalshulas of Ruchnius, Mesichlim Nivdolim, from the deeper levels of intellect. Intellect will never create something, right? Something tangible. God does. He takes something totally godly, ethereal, spiritual, godly, and he makes something physical. That is a total, that's called Yesh Me'ayin, something from something. And that's a total contradiction. And he is the one who bears contradiction. Soibel Hafochen. He's the one who can carry these contradictions, this paradox. Afilo shel malachim. You won't even get an angel from this. Elaliyes, yeah, you'll never get anything tangible from sichlim mevdolim, from the detached intellects. Afilo shel malachim, even from the angels, who are spiritual, right? They're spiritual, they're not physical, and don't become physical. There's an interface between the physical and the spiritual, which is another story, but the distilling spirit won't get physicality. Elaliyas ruach habehema. So you get spirit. You get the spirit of the animal, the soul of the animal, right? Shore, and it comes from a spiritual entity, which is referred to by Yechezkel and is understood in Kabbalah and Chassidus. It's called the face of the ox. The face of the Yechezkel had a vision of a chariot, and on it were an ox on the right, a lion on the left, and a bird in the. But these are all spiritual entities. And this is written about in another place, Vayin Shom, you can see over there. That's okay. Vayesh me'ayin nikra bria b'lashon hakodesh. So when we want to refer to God doing this thing which is out of the realm of anything else to do, which is to take to create physicality from spirituality, so we call this yesh me'ayin, and this is called creation. When God creates, it's not like, and this is a muscle brought often in Chassidus, it's not like the silversmith who creates a beautiful pot. That silversmith had to start with a lump of silver. He's just reworking physicality. That's not called creation. Creation is yesh me'ayin. There's something coming from absolutely nothing. Tangibility coming from something which is absolutely intangible. That's called creation in B'lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue. Even though the physical creation that comes out of God's ability to bring things into being from something to nothing, from God's point of view, is like nothing. Is nothing in front of him. Everything is nothing in front of him. All right? Because he is always alone. This is also, just another way of saying the same paradox. There's an infinite number of stuff, and yet he is, and they all are expressions of him, and from his perspective, there's nothing besides him, because he alone is the everything that is. So nothing's changed. Since change doesn't change him, darkness doesn't darken him. So everything is considered like nothing. The Hainu, meaning what? Shabbatal b'metzias, everything which exists from his perspective has no existence. Legabi hakoyach ha'or v'hashefeh, everything is nullified in its existence in relation to the power and the light which flows from the kalim, from the vessels of the Yud Spheros, the 10 spheros of the 4 worlds. Shahakav, now we're talking about the beam. He takes the sun releases itself in beams of light. And that's the metaphor for essence of God transforming itself into infinite number of rays and radiations, the light of the Or Ein Sof. And the beam of the light of the Or Ein Sof, Meir Bohem, shines into the created things, Kaziv HaShemesh, like the ray of the sun, the Shemesh. But when the ray of the sun is in the sun, it's called sun. It's not called sunlight. It's the sun. So when creation is inside of him, that's called God. And there's nothing besides him. And yet, at the same time, he does something. The something he does, which is also magic, is called the tzimtzum. Just like the sun comes, when the sun pushes itself through the atmosphere has a way of refracting and changing the quality so that we get beams of light. And that's the mashal. So similarly, Hashem does this thing. He creates the atmosphere. He creates the tzimtzum. He creates that which the light is going to pass through. He creates the prism. And then all kinds of multiple things appear. But from his perspective, back on the upside, before the prism, nothing's changed. So that's what it means. All of creation doesn't have any effect on him whatsoever. He's like the sun before the Ziv. This is written, as is written in Shar Yichud V'Amuna, which if we were all here when we started this, we learned a few months ago. So we say, everything is considered like nothing. Where? In front of him. On the upside, before the prism. Everything is considered like nothing. This is Yidiyasi Yizborach Milamayla Lamata. And this is the perspective of God, which we call Das Elyon, looking at things from above to below. From his perspective to below, there's nothing besides him. He's looking at it before the prism, before the Tzimtzum. Aval, us, when we are down here after the prism, right, we're one of those beams of light, but we're even more than that. We're a beam of light which became physicalized into flesh and blood, and we're looking, so from down here, so to speak, up there. We feel ourselves to be entirely separate, right? I'm, certainly separate from you. You're many light waves, difference between us and you. But I have this glass case here. There's me, and there's me holding the glass case. And if there were another person in the room, there would be me and somebody else. So that's our perspective, right? So Yidiyah Shenamata Lamayla, from the perspective from below to above, the essentialness which is we call God, that which creates something substantial, is something separate. In our comprehension, Shemamata down here below. Because the power which flows into everything, we do not have touch with the life force which is within us. We feel the effect of the life force, but we can't see it. We can't touch it. We can feel the heart beating, but that which causes the beat, even if you're going to say, okay, well, it's a nervous impulse. Okay, so now let's look and down into the nervous impulse. You'll get to a stage where you can't see beyond that because it's unseeable. It's intangible. So Hashem is both intangible and he takes the form of tangibility. He contains two opposites, a paradox. But from our perspective, no paradox. I just can't see. I admit, I can't see. Ein musig, klau. And also, I can get, there's no way I can relate to this essence of God in a way that I can really grasp it at all. I can't grasp even a little bit of it. I can grasp the relationship between a cause and effect, right? The ball being thrown by the hand. If the ball had some consciousness, it could feel the power of the hand within it. But I can't grasp this, which is beyond me entirely. The effect has no grasp of the there's no comparability when we speak about physicality, that's the lowest of the low, and essence of God. Yet it is only essence of God which can make this and resolve this paradox and create something out of no thingness. He can create a thing out of no thing. It's not like Ilah v'Olam, the cause and effect, where one is yoide umasig as a hasoga belosa, where the effect can grasp something of the cause. But I think the better one than the ball is the guy next to me bumping into you. You turn around, you know what happened, right? There he is bumping into you. The effect has some direct experience and knowledge of the cause. And the effect is just batal etzlei. It was moved, became nullified, moved by the cause. Al yedei sogazu, and it knew the way it came from. And also, one guy hitting another guy. I don't know why I'm using this example on a subway. I haven't been on a subway in a long time, but it happens. Somebody bumps into you, right? And also, between the cause and effect, there's not a very big difference. One person and another person, or even the ball being thrown. There's a sense the ball has. If the ball had consciousness, you could look back and say, "Oh, there's the hand." But even if I have consciousness, I can't look back and see and grasp the essence of God. I can't. There are other ways, and by the way, the way of grasping the essence of God is Devar Mitzvah. Because when you hold a lulav, when you hold or wrap tefillin, when you light a candle for Shabbos, as we'll do soon, you're holding Elokus, godliness embodied in a physical object. That's where the union takes place. And I said that's as it says in Letters in Tanya. This is the whole purpose of this piece, is to give us a sense of the, what's the right word? The wondrousness, because it's beyond anything we can imagine, of essence of God being contained in a physical object. Okay, but cause and effect, I get the relationship. This, I don't get the relationship, but I'm holding the relationship. I'm holding it when I hold a Devar Mitzvah. When a cause and effect, he says this, I'm at the top of page Kuf Lamed now, in a cause and effect, the effect can look back and see the cause. The effect sees that it's an effect, that it sees the cause. But in a yesh me'ayin, lo minei v'lo mikutzoser, there's no relationship at all. So you can't say that the cause and effect is anything like, the difference between a cause and effect is nothing like the difference between mahusa yesh hanivra, the essence of something substantial in his hand, lemahusa koyek ve'or hashafoyaboy, in relation to the power of godliness which is within it. When you pick up something physical, you have I don't see godliness in this. Deeper levels of myself, we say this all the time, that godliness is invested in this, but it's invested in this in a yesh me'ayin way. I see the yesh. I have no tangible experience of the ayin. I have a soulful experience of the ayin, and I have a soulful experience of godliness invested in things called mitzvahs, but I can't touch that essence per se. So there's before. I don't, not a bit of it between mahus hayesh and nivra. There's no grasping I can have that the physical substance can have lemahus hakoyach or shafeyabo in relation to the light which is within it. To bring it into being from nothing to something. I cannot touch that experience. None of us can touch in a tangible way the ayin infusing the yesh. Yet that is what a mitzvah is. It's the essence of God. It's expressed as the will of God, but the will is also somewhat external. It's the essence of God enclosed in a physical thing, and that physical thing is the thing which we take in hand or put on, or whatever it is, and we are wrapped up, to use a talus, for example, or holding, to use a lulav, for example. We're holding essence of God embedded in a physical object. Those are today in Shabbos, says Tanya. As I said, if it weren't for that little preface in Lessons in Tanya, I wouldn't be saying so much of what I'm saying, because the conclusion that essence is in the physical, it's there in this parsha, because these two things are so opposite. How do these two realms exist together? Because he's the one who can bear opposites. And so, but we can say the epitome of this is when essence of God is expressed. Everything is a result of essence of God, but essence of God is expressed. He says, I am investing my very self, my essence, in the Torah. So anything that pertains to Torah and mitzvahs, you can hold in your hand the essence of God. All right. Who's out there? Anything you want to say? Except the Shabbos. We'll see you Sunday, Emir Hashem.
Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.